Hey guys, tonight we descend into the rank, gritty, and gloriously awful world of medieval labor, a time when your job title said less about your career path and more about your risk of plague and burns. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're retuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's say you're born in medieval England and your career dreams are modest. You don't want to be a knight, too stabby. You don't want to be a monk, too quiet, so you take the path of least resistance. You become a gong farmer. Gong, in case you were wondering, is not a musical instrument here. It's medieval slang for human excrement. And a gong farmer was the lucky soul who got to remove it from latrines, cesspits, privies, wherever medieval people relieved themselves after a hearty meal of turnips and regret. You worked at night not because the job was mysterious, because it was so offensively pungent that townsfolk preferred not to be reminded of your existence during daylight. You arrived with a shovel, a bucket, and possibly some last shreds of dignity. You descended into the pit, sometimes waist-deep, sometimes further, depending on how productive the town had been. The good news? Gong farmers were actually paid well. Sometimes more than carpenters or thatchers. It's the bad news. You earned every coin while marinating in centuries of communal shame. Health and safety weren't exactly priorities in the 1300s. Cesspits could collapse. Methane could ignite. There are recorded cases of gong farmers passing out from fumes, slipping into the muck, and dying in what can only be described as the worst obituary ever written. As for tools of the trade, a wooden bucket, a long-handled scoop, occasionally a donkey, not for companionship, just to haul the cart of waste out of town. The waste was then dumped in designated lay stalls or used as fertilizer. Because nothing says organic farming like medieval bowel movements, socially, gong farmers were avoided. You didn't exactly get invited to banquets, but some found camaraderie among fellow night soil collectors. It's probably while competing over who had the worst day. The smell, you didn't get used to it. You just stopped complaining. Eventually, it became part of your personality. So yes, the gong farmer may not have wielded a sword or worn a fancy hat, but they kept medieval cities from drowning in their own digestive legacy. They were the unsung heroes of sanitation, one bucket at a time. And if that sounds bad, don't worry. It gets worse. Let's say you're not cut out for urban cesspits. You want something more natural, outdoorsy, involving wildlife? Congratulations, you've just become a leech collector. The proud medieval professional who spent their days wading through bogs to harvest nature's little vampires. The job description was simple. Step into a pond, stand very still, and let leeches attach themselves to your bare legs. That's it. You are the bait. You attract them with your warm blood, your poor life choices, and your resigned expression. Once the slimy suckers latch on, you yank them off and drop them into a jar. Peat until you feel faint from blood loss, then head home for a nice nap and a probable infection. This wasn't just some fringe occupation either. Leeches were in high demand, thanks to medieval medicine's favorite treatment, letting people bleed. Got a headache? Leech it? Melancholy? Let's drain some joy out of you. Plague. Surely you just need slightly less blood. Barber surgeons loved leeches like modern influencers love ring lights. They were essential. And that meant someone had to collect thousands of them. Enter you. The walking charcuterie board of the swamp. Protective clothing? Not really. Most collectors worked barefoot and bare-legged, often women or the very poor. The lucky ones wore a skirt, the unlucky ones wore welts. And if you were really unlucky, you'd come home with leeches still attached, growing plump and smug beneath your knees. The hazards didn't stop at blood-sucking. These weren't sparkling clean garden ponds. We're talking muddy, stagnant water filled with bacteria, frogs, and the occasional judgmental goose. You risked tetanus, trench foot, and trench shame. As for payment, a pittance, maybe a few coins per dozen leeches, maybe food. But mostly, you got the satisfaction of contributing to the fine art of bloodletting and the slow-motion downfall of patient health. On the bright side, you were unlikely to get mugged on the way home. No one wanted to get that close. So you've tried human sewage and parasitic pond duty, and you're thinking, what's next in this soul-crushing career ladder? Well, how about burying victims of the Black Death? That's right, you dear viewer are now a plague barrier. Because in medieval times, death didn't wait for job interviews. Its job came with three main requirements: a shovel, a strong stomach, and a complete disregard for personal safety. Protective gear? Please. At best, you might have a rag soaked in vinegar tied to your face. At worst, you had nothing but your own optimism, and some garlic someone swore would repel evil vapors. When the plague hit in the mid-14th century, people dropped faster than common sense at a witch trial. Entire neighborhoods emptied overnight. Corpses piled up in streets, homes, and churches. Someone had to move them, but someone was you. Mass graves or plague pits became your daily office. You'd spend hours digging trenches wide enough to toss in entire families. Sometimes there weren't even coffins, just bundles of limbs hastily wrapped in cloth, occasionally accompanied by a chicken for good luck. Or maybe it just wandered in. Don't expect gratitude. People avoided you like, well, the plague. If you showed up in the marketplace, everyone suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be. You were considered bad luck, bad smell, and potentially contagious. A medieval triple threat. The work was endless. No weekends, no holidays. The plague didn't take breaks, and neither did you. The worst part, you knew that every day on the job was a gamble. Many barriers became what they buried, especially after a sneeze or cough from the wrong direction. Compensation. In theory, the town council might toss you a few coins or stale bread. In practice, you often got paid in continued existence. On the plus side, there was a sense of grim purpose. You kept cities from collapsing under the literal weight of death. But let's not romanticize it. You were basically playing Tetris with corpses while wondering if that weird itch on your arm was just fleas or fate. Let's say you've survived all that. You've managed not to drown in feces, be drained by leeches, or catch the bubonic lottery. You want something with a little more prestige, something that lets you travel, something spiritual. Welcome to the Holy Pilgrimage. You're a pilgrim now. Sounds noble, right? A journey for the soul. Except it wasn't a curated wellness retreat. It was more like a multi-month episode of Survivor with dysentery. Pilgrimages were a religious obligation, penance for sins, or an attempt to earn divine favor. But mostly, it was walking, endless walking, across mountains, valleys, hostile villages, and bandit-infested forests. No GPS, no hotels, just your feet, your blisters, and a pouch of stale bread. If you were lucky, you joined a caravan. Safety in numbers. If not, you took your chances with wolves, highwaymen, and angry innkeepers who didn't care if you were seeking salvation. They wanted coins. And if you didn't have coins, you were sleeping in a ditch next to someone named Gregory who had tea-bathed since last harvest. Religious relics were a highlight. You'd finally arrive at some grand cathedral to venerate the toenail of St. Bartholomew or the nasal hair of a lesser-known martyr. You'd crawl, pray, cry, then turn around and walk all the way back. Spiritually uplifting? Yes. Physically? Absolute torment. And if you died along the way, which was common, your corpse was sometimes buried along the road with a wooden sign saying he meant well. But let's say you make it back. You want something with excitement. With flair? With drama? You become a tournament fighter. Not a knight. A jobber. A practice target. You're not galloping in polished armor. You're getting hit with lances for other people's entertainment. Tournaments were medieval sporting events. Part Olympic Games, part WWE, part accidental manslaughter. Knights competed for glory, competed for coins and maybe not losing your teeth. Your gear, secondhand, dented. You don't own a horse? You might rent one, or more likely, you run around on foot during mock battles, called M. These weren't polite sparring matches. They were chaotic brawls, where someone always got a broken rib or a dislocated shoulder. You were paid in meat, beer, or if you were fortunate. The right to clean up after the event and keep dropped weapons? Congratulations, you're now the proud owner of half a sword. Socially, you were entertainment. People laughed when you fell, cheered when you bled. Kids threw pebbles. Nobles sneered. You, the working-class gladiator, kept the crowd entertained and your dentist employed. And yet these jobs, as foul or ridiculous as they sound, were crucial. They kept the system running. They formed the smelly backbone of medieval life. Every gong, farmer, leech, collector, corpse mover, pilgrim, and practice dummy had a role. And in their own strange, terrible way, they left a legacy. So next time you feel like your job sucks, remember, at least you're not ankle deep in leeches or human waste. Unless you are. In which case, you have my deepest respect and probably a strong immune system. If you enjoyed this dive into the darkly comedic world of medieval labor, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment below. What job do you think would have been your fate in the Middle Ages? Would you have survived? Would you be the guy who tried to pet the plague rat? Sleep well, fellow time travelers. And may your dreams be free of cesspits and geese. So you want to be a knight, not a bard, not a blacksmith, not a humble monk with clean hands and a full belly. No, you want the armor, the sword, the horse, the honor, the tales of valor. You want the cheers, the tournaments, the damsels, the glory. It's a big mistake. Let's start with the beginning. You're not born a knight. You're born a son. It's probably the third one. Which means the firstborn inherits the land. The second becomes a priest, and you. You get handed off at age 7 to live in someone else's castle as a page. Think that's cute? Think again. You are now a glorified servant in a stone building colder than a crypt. Your days begin before dawn with a wooden bucket of icy water dumped on your head. You scrub boots, clean stables, fetch wine, chase chickens, and pray no one notices your shaking hands. Pages are not trained warriors. They reminiature butlers in itchy wool who get yelled at for breathing too loud. If you survive pagehood, you graduate around 14 to become a squire. That's where the real suffering begins. Because now you follow a real knight your master into battle, into tournaments, to taverns, and most often into trouble. Your job is to carry his shield, his sword, his banner, and sometimes his half-conscious body when he strung himself into a pile of hay behind a barn. Think you'll be learning swordplay? Sure. Right after you polish his armor, rub down the horse, oil the leather straps, clean the chamber pot, sharpen the lance, and apologize to the innkeeper for what happened last night. But let's talk about armor. Armor weighs more than your future. The breastplate alone is a sheet of hammered steel that makes breathing optional. Chainmail. It's 1,000 tiny rings designed to pinch your skin in places you didn't know existed. And yes, it rusts. Which means you clean it every day, or your knight stinks like a moldy pot. As a squire, you get to help your knight suit up. It takes an hour. He sweats like a pig. He complains like a widow. You try not to pass out from the fumes. And then once he's fully armored, he looks majestic. He nods. He mounts his horse. Go poor. Exhausted, you get to follow him on foot. Battle. You're not ready for battle. You hold the spare weapons. You run messages. You try not to puke at the sight of guts. You watch people die screaming and horses fall with broken legs. Sometimes you get hit anyway, by accident, or on purpose. If you're lucky, you live long enough to actually get knighted. Usually after some absurd feat, like retrieving your lord's dropped glove from a puddle full of rats during a siege, or not dying for 10 years straight, and the dubbing ceremony.
That's a joke!
You kneel before your lord. He taps your shoulders with a sword. You say an oath. Everyone claps, and then nothing changes. You still fight. You still bleed. You just do it with a fancier title and worse expectations. So you think living in a medieval castle was glamorous? Stone walls, velvet curtains, roaring fires, banquets every night, right? Well, welcome to the world behind the throne, where the air smelled like moldy meat, the floors doubled as toilets. The most powerful creature wasn't the king, but the rat that lived in his breadbasket. You're not the lord. You're not the lady. You re the one turning a pig on a spit for 12 hours straight, while the noble complains the skin's not crispy enough. You're the hands that wash silk with frozen fingers, the back that carries chamber pots, poor soul who drew the short straw and now has to unclog the moat. Welcome to your new life. You're in the castle now, and it's going to be a long winter. Let's start in the heart of the castle, the kitchen. But don't expect a cozy fireplace and cheerful staff humming tunes. Expect chaos. The medieval castle kitchen was hell, but with more grease and fewer exits. Fires roared in giant hearths, boiling cauldrons hissed, knives flew, and someone was always yelling. The air was a mix of burning fat, panic sweat, and onion. At the lowest rank, you're the spit boy. Your job is to rotate an entire pig over an open flame. By hand, no gears, no brakes, just you and your scorched eyebrows. Miss a turn, and the meat burns, which means a noble tantrum. It's the kind that gets people flogged. You rotate the pig with the determination of someone who doesn't want to lose a finger, or worse, be demoted to latrine duty. Above you is the scullery maid. She washes everything. Pans, knives, wooden bowls, spoons, the floor, sometimes the cook himself after a mead-fueled collapse. No soap, just ash, sand, and cold water. You scrub until your fingers are raw, and even then the result is what modern chefs would describe as not quite clean, but probably edible. Then there's the turnspit dog. Yes, a real dog, inside a wheel like a furry hamster, running endlessly to rotate meat on a spit. A living kitchen appliance. Gosh, if you're lucky, you're not the one feeding and cleaning the exhausted beast. But chances are, if you're hearing this, you are. You think things get better outside the kitchen? Think again. Welcome to the garderobe. It's the castle's bathroom, which is a kind term for a stone bench with a hole that drops waste into a chute, leading ideally outside the wall. You, unlucky recruit, are assigned to garderobe maintenance. That means you inspect the chute for clogs, the stick, sometimes with your hands. Nobles ate well. Their waste was epic. Let's not forget the chamber pot runners. That's you. Middle of the night. Someone calls. You rush up spiral stairs, hoping not to trip over your own feet or the drunk Baroness's dog. She's had too much wine and too many pears. You take the pot, you run. You empty it. You rinse. You return it, hoping you don't spill a drop. If you do, you're mopping at dawn. Let's visit the laundry. Noble clothes don't clean themselves. You're assigned to the washing crew. There's a stream behind the castle. It's January. Your job is to kneel in freezing water, scrub linen with lye homemade, and very good at dissolving skinand. Hang it to dry while hoping a docent tea freeze midair. The nobles. They'll complain it smells like wet dog and sorrow. They don't know those are your tears. Need a break from water? Try the stables. The horses were pampered more than most humans. You muck out stalls. You brush manes. You feed oats, which cost more than your week's food. If a noble's horse sneezes, you might be blamed. If the stallion kicks someone, it's your fault. If the warhorse has a bad day, it's your back that breaks under the saddle. Now, the moat. That romantic feature circling the castle, it's not just water. It's a trash can with frogs. Old food, dead animals, rotting plants, sewage, overflow, you name it, it's in there. Someone has to clean it. Guess who? You wade in. Waist deep, hoping that bump against your leg is a log and not something that used to moo. You drag out corpses, weapons, sometimes entire carts. You come out smelling like history-an, not the good kind. Think you'd prefer something quieter? Try being the scribe's assistant. Hours upon hours, grinding ink, sharpening quills, turning pages, and not daring to sneeze near a manuscript that took months to copy. And don't even think about correcting a noble's spelling error. That's how scribes lose fingers. Still with me? Good, because now we meet the true overlords of the castle. The rats. Not poetic, not metaphorical. Real rats. Big ones. Smart ones. They lived in the walls, the beds, the flour sacks, and the chapel. They weren't afraid of people. They were part of the staff. They knew which corridors were warmest, which rooms had cheese, and which servants could be bullied. You learned to coexist, or you didn't. Either way, they thrived. Want a job with some prestige? Try the falconer's apprentice. Sounds glamorous handling majestic birds of prey. In reality, you get pooped on, scratched, and bitten. Falcons are moody, high maintenance, and terrifying. Spend hours feeding them raw meat and praying they do, and gouge your eye out when they rehaving a bad feather day. If you're unlucky enough to end up in the dungeons, your job is less glamorous and more ... disturbing. Cleaning up after prisoners, tossing stale bread through iron bars, and sometimes listening to the screams of those being questioned by the torturer. You're not even paid in coin. It's just in survival. Maybe you're part of the castle entertainment crew. Musicians, dancers, actors. Sounds fun. Not really. Perform badly and you'll be humiliated in front of the court. Perform too well, and you might attract the attention of someone you'd rather not spend the night with. Most musicians drank heavily. Most dancers had bruised feet. Everyone smelled like old cheese. Let's pause here. You might be thinking, well, at least they had entertainment. Sure, if you count watching the Lord beat a jester for mispronouncing a rhyme or seeing who could throw a turkey leg the farthest. The court was a circus. A dangerous, over-perfumed, disease-ridden circus. Jesters risked flogging. Servants risked banishment. And the only real winner was the dog who got to lick the floor after a feast. So you're considering a career in the medieval castle industry. Let me stop you right there. First of all, it's cold. It's damp. It's loud. The wind howls through the arrow slits all night long. If you're not careful, you might get drunk and stumble through the halls like a fool, not to mention the rats. They would organize what sounded like a union meeting every night behind the pantry. You sleep on straw, and you don't get much of it. You're constantly being woken up for one reason or another. If you're not careful, you might die, or your entire castle might catch fire. But despite the filth, the noise, and the endless labor, you showed up. Because not showing up meant getting replaced fast. There was always someone poorer, hungrier, and more desperate than you. Someone who didn't mind scrubbing vomit off the banquet floor for a piece of stale pie. So the next time you watch a movie with a beautiful medieval castle, and imagine yourself living there, remember you wouldn't be the one in the silk robes by the fire. You'd be the one refueling the fire with your last splinter of hope. Unless, of course, you were a rat. In which case, congratulations, you just might have had the best job in the castle. So you think you could survive in a medieval village? Not the castle, not the monastery. We're talking about the muddy, rat-infested, disease-soaked village, huddled somewhere between a cow field and a bad idea. You don't have a title. You don't have boots. You have a wooden bowl, one chicken, and a lifetime supply of back pain. Welcome to the real Middle Ages. Here, your alarm clock is a rooster with an attitude problem, and your bed is a pile of straw that smells like regret. You wake up with the sun because shutters are for rich people, and your morning routine begins with coughing, scratching, and hoping today isn't the day the plague arrives. First stop, the ditch, because someone needs to dig it, and congratulations, it's you. You dig ditches for drainage, for defense, for the latrine, for reasons no one remembers. The soil is wet, the shovel is splintered, and the overseer is yelling at you for not digging faster while he sips ale from a cracked mug. After that, it's time to feed the animals, assuming they haven't died overnight. Your goat has a limp, your pig's missing, and your one remaining chicken is staring at you with the kind of glare that says, "I lay eggs, but not for you." You scatter some barley. They look unimpressed. Breakfast? Porridge? Again. It's oats boiled in water with a hint of desperation. If it's a special day, maybe you'll get a leek. Maybe you eat with a wooden spoon that's been in your family longer than your surname. It's cracked, but so are your teeth. Time to work. You're a villager, which means you're a farmer, a builder, a brewer, a weaver, a thatcher, a poop shoveler, occasionally a corpse hauler. You grow food for the Lord. You pay taxes to the Lord. And when the Lord's men ride by and trample your cabbages, you bow and say, "Thank you, my Lord." You spend hours in the fields, bent over, pulling weeds, planting seeds, swatting flies, praying for rain, then cursing the mud when it comes. Your hands are so blistered they qualify as armor. You lose track of time. The sun burns your neck, and the only thing louder than your stomach is your neighbor's donkey, who hasn't shut up since Pentecost. Your friend tried that. He still died. But now the pillow smells like toad. You bathe once a month, maybe in the river. In full view of your neighbor's goats and God. Soap is rare. Warm water is a fantasy. And when you're done, you're wetter, but not much cleaner. Let's not forget the church. It's the biggest building in the village. You go there on Sundays, feast days, and whenever someone dies, which is often. The priest speaks Latin. You don't understand Latin, but you nod, cross yourself, and drop a coin in the box. That coin could have bought a turnip. Want some excitement? It's always the fare. Once a year, you drink mead that tastes like bees and regret. You watch a bear dance. You listen to a minstrel sing about a knight who probably didn't exist. It's raining again. The pig's still missing, and the rooster is screaming. Oh, and did we mention winter? Winter is when your world becomes ice, smoke, and coughing. Your breath fogs up inside your own house. The stream you wash and freezes, or your hands crack. The only warmth is from the goat, if you're lucky enough to have one still alive. You sleep under straw and patchwork rags and pretend your toes don't feel like stone. So next time you look at a medieval tapestry and see smiling villagers and flowered meadows, remember, those flowers are probably growing on a burial pit. And the smiling, that's probably just gas. Medieval village life, where every day is a miracle. Mostly because you're not dead yet, if you're wondering about that pig. He joined a monastery, shaved his head, became abbot. Last anyone heard, he was doing quite well. Meanwhile, you're still eating porridge? Again. So you want to be a knight, not a bard, not a blacksmith, not a humble monk with clean hands and a full belly. No, you want the armor, the sword, the horse, the honor, the tales of valor. You want the cheers, the tournaments, the damsels, the glory. It's a big mistake. Let's start with the beginning. You're not born a knight. You're born a son. It's probably the third one. Which means the firstborn inherits the land. The second becomes a priest. And you get handed off at age 7 to live in someone else's castle as a page? Think that's cute? Think again. You are now a glorified servant in a stone building colder than a crypt. Your days begin before dawn with a wooden bucket of icy water dumped on your head. You scrub boots, clean stables, fetch wine, chase chickens, and pray no one notices your shaking hands. Pages are not trained warriors. They reminiature butlers in itchy wool who get yelled at for breathing too loud. If you survive pagehood, you graduate around 14 to become a squire. That's where the real suffering begins. Because now you follow a real knight your master into battle, into tournaments, to taverns, and most often into trouble. Your job is to carry his shield, his sword, his banner, and sometimes his half-conscious body when he strung himself into a pile of hay behind a barn. Think you'll be learning swordplay? Sure. Right after you polish his armor, rub down the horse, oil the leather straps, clean the chamber pot, sharpen the lance, and apologize to the innkeeper for what happened last night. But let's talk about armor. Armor weighs more than your future. The breastplate alone is a sheet of hammered steel that makes breathing optional. Chainmail. It's 1,000 tiny rings designed to pinch your skin in places you didn't know existed. And yes, it rusts. Which means you clean it every day, or your knight stinks like a moldy pot. As a squire, you get to help your knight suit up. It takes an hour. He sweats like a pig. He complains like a widow. You try not to pass out from the fumes. And then once he's fully armored, he looks majestic. He nods. He mounts his horse. Go poor. Exhausted, you get to follow him on foot. Battle. You're not ready for battle. You hold the spare weapons. You run messages. You try not to puke at the sight of guts. Watch people die screaming and horses fall with broken legs. Sometimes you get hit anyway, by accident or on purpose. If you're lucky, you live long enough to actually get knighted. Usually after some absurd feat, like retrieving your lord's dropped glove from a puddle full of rats during a siege, or not dying for 10 years straight, and the dubbing ceremony.
That's a joke!
You kneel before your lord. He taps your shoulders with a sword. You say an oath. Everyone claps, and then nothing changes. You still fight. You still bleed. You just do it with a fancier title and worse expectations. But let's not forget the political side of knighthood. Being a knight isn't just swords and shouting. You must navigate the endless feast of schemes, alliances, grudges, and favors. Lords expect loyalty. Bishops expect donations. Kings expect blood. Everyone expects something. One wrong word at a feast can land you on latrine duty for a year, or worse, branded a traitor. Court politics are like a chess match played with daggers. You smile while men who hate your family toast your honor. You cheer for men who killed your cousins. You bow to nobles whose idea of sport is making you joust against their idiot nephews. And if you rise too fast, if the songs about you spread too widely, if you win too many tournaments, don't worry, someone will accuse you of sorcery, or sleeping with a duchess, or poisoning a boar. Survive that, and maybe you'll get invited to a crusade. Yes, the Crusades. Nothing like traveling 1,000 miles to die in a desert for sins you didn't commit. You board a boat filled with rats and prayers. You arrive half-starved, sunburnt, and seasick. You march through sand with armor designed for rain. You meet heat like fire, arrows like wasps, enemies who don't play by your rules. You watch men boil in their mail. You drink wine cut with seawater. You pray in Latin and die in Greek. Your holy reward? Maybe a finger bone from a saint. It's maybe dysentery. But let's say you survive. Let's say you return home. You're thinner, poorer, haunted. No one remembers why you left, only that you came back different. Your old lord is dead. Your land is disputed. Castle is drafty. Your cousin wife greets you with silence and your dog doesn't recognize you. Still want the sword? Still want the title? A knight's life is pain-wrapped in pageantry. A brutal ballet of duty, scars, and silence. And in the end, for all your sacrifice, you may still be buried in a borrowed cloak with your name forgotten. But for a moment, just once, in a field of mud beneath a sky of steel, you held the line. You raised your sword. You screamed your oath. And for that single heartbeat, you were a legend, till your horse stepped on your foot and you fainted in your helmet. Let's talk about your horse. You dream of a majestic stead noble, loyal, a beast of muscle and speed. What you get is a half-mad war horse with teeth like daggers and an attitude like a drunk mercenary. You don't ride it. You negotiate with it. You whisper promises. You bribe it with apples. You pray it doesn't bite your arm off when you're adjusting the saddle. Training a war horse is like training a lion that hates saddles. Kicks, it rears, it refuses to gallop unless you're already late. In battle, it either saves your life or flings you into enemy spears. And if it dies, good luck finding another one that doesn't hate your face and feeding it. That horse eats better than you. Oats, hay, grain, even bread soaked in ale if it's being pampered. Meanwhile, you're gnawing on a turnip and pretending it's roast duck. But still, there's something holy in the bond between knight and steed. You ride together, you bleed together. You watch each other grow old. When it dies, it hurts more than the arrow in your side. Now let's discuss winter. Winter in a stone castle is not romantic. It is damp misery wrapped in blankets that smell like goat. The wind whistles through the arrow slits like a ghost with a grudge. Your boots never dry. Your fingers turn blue. Your nose is constantly dripping. There's no fire big enough to keep the chill from your bones. You huddle around the hearth with 6 squires and still feel like you're refreezing from the inside out. You sleep in your cloak, your armor hanging nearby like a frozen corpse. Food is worse. A cook boils turnips until they dissolve into despair. Dried meat tastes like leather straps. Wine turns to vinegar. Ale freezes in the barrel. Everyone gets sick, and the barber keeps leeches in a jar just in case. You long for spring, you pray for it. And when it comes, with the mud and the flies, and the first campaign of the season, you almost miss winter. And then there are the songs. Oh yes, the ballads, the poems. The wandering minstrels with their lutes and exaggerated rhymes. You hear tales sung about you in places you've never been. Fighting monsters you've never met. Rescuing maidens who definitely didn't want rescuing. In truth, your most heroic act last year was dragging a drunk baron out of a river. But according to the bard in the village square, you slew 100 brigands, saved a virgin princess, and tamed a wyvern using only your glare. You try correcting them once. Big mistake. People don't want truth, they want legend. So you sit there, ale in hand, pretending to smile while your life is retold like a drunken fever dream. You don't mind really, it's better than being forgotten. And maybe one day, when you're long gone, a boy with a stick and a dream will shout your name before swinging at a tree. And maybe that's enough. So you want to be a knight? Here's the truth. You'll break your bones before your blade. You'll bury more friends than foes. You'll trade comfort for duty and peace for memory. But if you're lucky, just lucky enough, you'll stand tall when others run. You'll lift your shield when others fall. For one heartbeat of history, you'll be more than a man. You'll be a knight. It's the real kind. Not for the songs, not for the glory, but because you chose to be one when it hurt the most.